Trump leads Biden in Michigan and Georgia as broad majorities hold negative views of the current president. Former President Donald Trump has the upper hand over President Joe Biden in two critical battleground states, Michigan and Georgia, with broad majorities in both states holding negative views of the sitting president's job performance, policy positions, and sharpness, according to new CNN polls conducted by SSRS. In Georgia, a state Biden carried by a very narrow margin in 2020, registered voters say they prefer Trump, 49%, over Biden, 44%, for the presidency in a two-way hypothetical matchup. In Michigan, which Biden won by a wider margin, Trump has 50% support to Biden's 40%, with 10% saying they wouldn't support either candidate even after being asked which way they lean. In both Michigan and Georgia, the share of voters who say they wouldn't support either candidate is at least as large as the margin between Biden and Trump. The two most recent occupants of the White House appear to be the most likely nominees for their respective parties in next year's presidential election, with Biden's primary challengers largely lacking traction in polling on Democrats' preferences, and Trump well ahead of his GOP rivals in nearly all polling, including these surveys on the nomination race. Trump's margin over Biden in the hypothetical matchup is significantly boosted by support from voters who say they did not cast a ballot in 2020, with these voters breaking in Trump's favor by 26 points in Georgia and 40 points in Michigan. Those who report having voted in 2020 say they broke for Biden over Trump in that election, but as of now, they tilt in Trump's favor for 2024 in both states, with Biden holding on to fewer of his 2020 backers than does Trump. Those numbers hint at possible challenges for both candidates in the long campaign ahead. Trump's advantage rests on the assumption that he can both maintain support among a fickle, politically disengaged group and convince them to actually vote, while Biden will need to win back the support of disaffected former backers who show little excitement about his re-election bid. Biden's struggles in both states are apparent in voters' impressions of his performance as president and their views on how his policy positions, ability to understand their problems, stamina, and sharpness fail to live up to their image of an ideal president. Overall, just 35% in Michigan and 39% in Georgia approve of Biden's job performance, the surveys find, and majorities in both states say his policies have worsened economic conditions in the country, 54% in Georgia, 56% in Michigan. Those grim numbers partially reflect softness among his base. About 1/4 of Democratic and Democratic-leaning registered voters in each state disapprove of Biden, and a little more than 4 in 10 say his policies have not helped the country's economy. Biden's campaign is working to sell voters on the success of his economic agenda, with a recently launched ad in Michigan focused on small businesses and the middle class. The poll also finds little consensus among voters in both states on America's handling of the Israel-Hamas war, an issue that has caused a rift within the Democratic Party, with more progressive and younger Democrats pressing Biden to call for a ceasefire. Overall, about 4 in 10 in each state say the U.S. is doing the right amount to help Israel, with about a third saying the U.S. is doing too much and roughly a quarter too little. About half of voters younger than 35 in both states, though, say the U.S. is doing too much, 49% in Michigan, 46% in Georgia, more than 20 points higher than the share of those age 50 or older, 23% in both states.